Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Season 2 finale of Go Go Loser Ranger. Great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, we're immediately picking up where the last episode left off. A horde of kaiju are on their way, and it's kind of this nice little reunion for all of the cadets that we followed last season of kind of, some are still cadets, some have joined respective units of the Ranger Force, so it's kind of dope seeing everyone together again, especially when Urabe shows up later on. Well, he's not the only one that returns. So does Shippo. He comes back as like the White Ranger, where you're the White Keeper. It's like, well, he was always despaired because he got outmatched by Sasara's like right hand guy in the Peak Squad, and like his whole his strength and everything was everything going for him. But he comes in wrecking shop, trying to be. I guess that was why he was away. It's like, I've come back. I've gone through my training, or I've come back stronger. I'm actually the sixth member of the Dragon Keepers. I'm the White Keeper. It's like, okay. I guess he saw his time to shine, and so he did. So he shows up. So does Urabe, backed by all the fighters, which they figured, well, might as well take an opportunity because they have no love specifically for what Yakshi is doing, because it's like, oh, like, you don't really know what it's to be a monster, so you don't really kind of represent us, you don't speak for us. So they showed up, they all transformed into a bridge for the humans to cross over. So it does beg the question in the long run, what does that mean for humans' relationships with monsters, especially like any potential Sunday showdowns going forward? Like, what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? Maybe the argument could be, well, humanity kind of forgets. It's like no matter what happens in history, we have a tendency to forget. And it's just kind of like, well, yeah, that was a one-time thing. Now that everything's kind of kosher again, let's kind of forget that. Let's move on. I don't know. It does beg the question. But either way, the Dusters came through and ended up saving a lot of people. I guess you can make the argument they're technically on the Rangers side because they were forced to submit. And I guess maybe in their mind it's also like, hey, this can put us in a good standing with the Keepers. But obviously, Yakshi as the Messiah ends up easily decimating everyone because no one can stand up to him. But then we have Uskubo show up, and Angel show up, and she's by his side fighting through and through. And she's willing to take them all down because she still believes in this. This is what needs to be. This is her mission. But when the time comes, she couldn't kill her former allies. Because what's-his-face ended up asking her, like, why did you save me back then during our fight with Pistola if your mission was really all of this? But she's like, right, can't we, like, let them live? Like, maybe letting them live, like, once we show them your strength, and then they'll be forced to submit. But then her father kind of abandons her because he's like, right, you are always a means to an end. You're a vessel for your mom who's inside of you, like a portion of her. That's why she's part monster. So it seems like Uskubo is just some random girl he found because she's the girl, like, I guess the Dragon Keepers tracked his love down. What's her name? Jilly Merida? It's something like that. And tracked her down, but she was in a weakened state and she inhabited like a portion of what remained of her inside of a human, and that's why Uskubo's eyes the way it is. It's not like she was born half monster. She's a random girl that just happened to be nearby during the struggle, and I guess maybe the trauma of it all blocked her memory, so, but Uskubo isn't her actual biological dad. He's just the dude that found her, and it's like, yeah, the woman I love inhabited your body. In fact, I've never been talking to you. The angel I've been referencing is my love, not you. So I guess that's also why he named her Angel and stuff like that, because he was speaking to his angel and not her, which is messed up and creepy on so many different levels. But yeah, she's not really his daughter. You're just a means to an end. And it's like, have you forgotten, like if I'm not going to listen to you, you just shut up and serve your purposes. So Hisui shows up, and so does Fighter D. In this moment, Angel is so confused and conflicted because she's just kind of like, this is all she's ever known. This is what she's believed. But then it's like, in her own mind, it's almost like she could feel her father's love for the first time, really, But it's also like, was that kind of love, because inside her head she's hearing her mom talk to her, be like, go ahead and do it, like you have your mission, you have your purpose, like are you really just gonna do this? And she doesn't know what to kind of believe in this moment. But then D shows up and it kind of sparks something in her where he's like, hey, I'm gonna deal with your dad, and he's walking away. It clicks in her mind like, oh, she recognizes him as Hibiki, and it's like, oh my god, is this what this has always been? Which I thought was so interesting, that it's like her eyes were kind of open, and she even says like for the first time, like she can't even, like all the noise of everything is blocked out by the sound of her heart. I was like, are we going down the direction I think we're going? And it seems like it is later on. So either way, when it's all said and done, like he came in for a sneak attack, and I love the conversation where he's kind of like, yo, Red, is this really all you got? Like, you're just gonna lay down there? And obviously Red's upset, but what he hears is a radio recording talking about like, oh my god, like look how awesome this monster is, there must be some infighting. But he's like, no, I'm the hero of this story. It's like the moment someone else tried to snatch the spotlight, but he's like, nah, screw that. And he begins attacking. And then we get this little thing where he just like part way, he's like, yeah, you remind me of my sister when she was in her rebellion. So he's like, wait a minute. He's like, wait, I have a sister? I'm like, wait, what was that? Did you like, I mean, once again, there's a lot we don't know about the Keepers, Red in particular, like how you got to where you are. So it's like, did you bury a lot of your past? Did you see, are we going to find out there's a tragic past where you ended up killing your sister or something to get to where you are? So that's why you're so obsessed with like this fame and everything, because you've had to sacrifice so much to get here. You know, it could easily be a rags to riches story where like he had nothing and then he had everything, and that's why he's been so adamant about protecting it, and why he's so like obsessed with, like I said, the fame and fortune of it all. Either way, he's using his gun, and basically he kind of has like this, like, you know, upgraded form, which I'm surprised they didn't ever, like no one else entered this form. He did, but I guess it's also because like, right, he no longer has his divine artifact, so maybe that's part of the reason why. But either way, he fires a cannon and he's like, you're not listening to me. Finally you're obeying orders. And it becomes almost like this. It kind of reminds me a tiny bit, just because of the cape and flowing the way it is. It kind of reminds me of Naruto. I'm terrible with names. It's the form where Naruto kind of enters, almost like a Kurama version of like Sage Mode, where he activates the Nine-Tails Fox's power, and he basically looks like himself, but his skin is orange. Like everything on him is like fiery orange, like he's literally orange. So I'm like, I don't know if that's considered like Sage Mode Kurama. I don't know. I don't know what the name of that form is off the top of my head. It kind of reminded me of that with like the flowing like flame cape. But it's almost like, yeah, typically, you know, the Red Ranger and Sentai stuff tends to be the one that gets the souped up stuff early on. They're like the one that kind of unleashes like the most power. So he does like a mega punch aiming for the horn. Then we have like Angel, like, it's like, oh, like Fighter D, like, take me with you on your journey of like world domination. And it's like, I'll be by your side. And she's blushing. He's like, what's going on? Even he's like, wait, what? She's like, yeah, like, thinking about what her father said. At least that's something she can take, where he's like, oh, eventually you'll meet a monster that's your fated one. She's like, you're my fated one. I'm like, it's actually kind of cute, and I'm actually happy about this. So that's super adorable. It would make sense, like, if you were going to have anyone by your side, it would make the most sense to have her by your side. But either way, the next part of the plan is in action now. The Dragon Keepers, one by one, is striking Death Messiah, and they're all pushing him further and further into the lab where they're gonna, not lab, but the facility where they're gonna lock him up. And ultimately, there's one last move needed to push him in there, and it's Fighter D himself. And now they're trapped in there because, like, yeah, this place is designed not to let them out. But they do point out something that is interesting, and I didn't really think about it too much. I'm like, oh, that is interesting. That didn't really pay as much attention to the difference was, unlike everyone else who's transformed into the boss monsters, he's kept his personality intact. It's because he didn't take the full dose, and Uskubo Angel's takeaway from it was, most likely it's like you didn't want to give up your memories of mom, so you didn't fully assimilate into the boss monster. You're still you despite all that, because you didn't take the full sample of both. And because of that, because you're not a full monster, you are part human, and part human means you can starve. So that they're trapping him in here because he doesn't have, like, obviously I think the conversation is basically because of his horn being damaged, he's in a very weakened state. He still has all his powers, but it's not powerful enough to bust out of here. And he's just going to be growing weaker and weaker day by day. So it makes it less likely for him to bust out of here. So yeah, he's stuck in there with Fighter D. And it's like, oh, you're going to have to starve it out. But hey, you want to fight? He's like, no. Like, the fact is, having a conversation with a monster is kind of like a dream come true. Because it's funny, he basically is such a fan of the TV show that essentially he recreated Def Messiah's weakness because he's that much of a fanboy. He's like, no, I'm keeping everything as accurate, even though it's like I'm like, oh, he must have disability, but he did try to keep it as accurate as possible, giving himself Def Messiah's weakness as well because he was such a fanboy of the TV show. So, but now Fighter D and him are stuck in there until he stars, and it's like, I am mostly a monster. I am still human, but it will take a while, and D's gonna stay in there with him for that duration. So while they're locked up, everything's going down on the outside. The Ranger Force is back, and once again, who knows if their numbers will ever be what they are, but I talked about it previously. I think because of the nature of, hey, the Monster Protection Society was about to do what it was about to do, but we, despite like the bad press against us, here we are, the Dragon Force back to protect you. Like, it's going to recover their image, and Red's going to do everything he can to do that. But then there's also going to be the element of, it's kind of almost like the news cycle of, oh, the hot topic 1 minute is kind of superseded by something else. It's kind of like distraction, and we did save the day, so that gains the Dragon Force, the Rangers a lot of like leeway and some forgiveness, I guess, in the long run. But like, it's like, right, you saved us, and I said previously, like, because of your adversaries, it's actually just going to bolster and make it so that people are less likely to turn against you in the future, because they're like, right, we can't trust anyone that comes out against the Dragon Keepers. But there probably is going to be a portion of our audience that is never rocking with them again. Maybe not. That's unclear by the end. We had X's and Hibiki about to be attacked by Petrola because she sided with the humans. She's not by his side anymore. He's like, oh, you're going to be like that? And he was about to kill them both, but then suddenly the boss monster, that's the couple, shows up because it's like, hey, we owe Hibiki. He's our savior. So Petrola's like, all right, I'm bouncing, but I can't wait to see what your end looks like, X's, and immediately takes off. And Hibiki plans on, he's kind of, interestingly enough, whereas his role, him and D were opposite sides of the same coin, where it's like, he was trying to save the Dragon Force, and like, he had similar mentality as a Monster Protection Society, trying to do stuff for both the humans and the monsters, but he wanted to kind of change the Ranger Force, whereas D wanted to destroy it. But now Hibiki's like, no, the force is made with like imposters and stuff like that. Imposters, like, I think he even said fake monsters or whatever. So it's like, he's gonna like disrupt everything. So it seems like he's kind of more on the destructive path now. Like, it's almost like, I'm gotta cleanse this. So who's by his side? X's the boss monster, because I guess they owe him after everything, and then Sheepa. I'm like, why the hell are you here? But I guess it's like, right, I have no place in the Dragon Force, the Ranger Force. I keep doing that. Sorry, Ranger Force anymore. So it's probably more like a thing of, well, where can I shine the most? It's here. I've chosen a side randomly for whatever reason. Maybe that's explored a little bit more in the manga, either like learning more about him and why he chose that, or maybe it's like something that comes up in the future to kind of explain it a little bit more, or maybe he's just going to give like a shit reason why he's there. We catch up with other people. We see Izomi in the hospital, as well as Sasara recovering. So I'm curious, are there going to be any replacements? Well, who's going to be Blue's right hand while she's recovering? Also, for his Izomi, and then Sasara, like, in the hospital, is that going to be a pink replacement in the time frame, or what? I mean, her wounds didn't recover because she was mostly trying to save Hibiki's life, so she suffered some pretty fatal wounds, but I think she will be okay and recover in the end. So I was kind of surprised when Urabe was still around by the end of the episode, because I saw something, like I said, I don't know if that was like once again, I was trying to find names and I stumbled across some slight spoilers about some stuff that didn't happen in the anime. So that makes me go like, oh, like I'm that Urabe. I even said it like, oh, he kind of deserted. So that might be like after the fact. I mean, obviously he had reason to step back in because his siblings were in danger. So wait, was it his? Wait, it's not his. Was it his siblings or is it his nieces and nephew? I can't remember now. I think I might have said nieces and nephew last episode, or I actually don't remember now off the top of my head. I forgot whether like if those were his younger siblings or whether those were like his nieces and nephews. I don't remember. Either way, he had family to protect, so that's why he came back. But beyond that, like I said, I don't know if that's in relation to a future story bit that apparently he kind of goes AWOL after this or what. I don't know. I also forgot about Suzukiri showing up the backup Red during his fight because she's the one that paused Deathmeshia, which you saw that look on Red's face. Well, Red was kind of saw her and she kind of gave him a nod and walked away, where it's just kind of like, I think for him it pissed him off because it's like, no, this was kind of almost like how Fighter D got robbed of his big fight against Blue last season by Petoro. I think it's kind of a similar feeling. It's just kind of like her little slight get back at him. He's like, oh, that woman. But we see her at the end, and she's with all those other copies, and they're in front of the two divine artifacts that they have. So she's still going to go about her mission. Fighter D also gained himself some like notoriety amongst the fellow Dusters because they're like, oh my god, D, he's alive, he's super strong, oh my god. So the legend of Fighter D is probably spreading like crazy because of that. So that puts you in an interesting position. I wonder, does that inspire any future movement from the Dusters causing their own rebellion or not? Probably not. Like I said, it just feels like everything's kind of status quo, but I don't think everything's exactly the same. Like it's not like we fully went back to the beginning, but it's still like we went to a decent enough status quo. So it's like it's been maintained, but I think things have changed in a way that they're not. It's like things broke when it came to the status quo, and you piece it back together, roughly speaking, but it's never going to fit quite the same again. So that's where things stand at the end of the episode. And then the stinger at the end post credits is a year has passed and angels come to release D. We see, I guess her dad finally died after a year starving, and D's like, all right, it's time to start again. So that's where things stand. It feels like there might not be a season 3 of the anime, but the manga is still ongoing. So once again, I want to stress this, like this is me roughly because of Googling, so don't take it as fact, but my understanding, at least the first season covered like 50 chapters. This kind of is in a similar pace, basically, or at least speculated to go to similar pace. I looked at the chapter titles and I couldn't quite tell, like for the manga, like where we are, but we're definitely like in the 90s, if not already the hundreds. Like some of the chapter stuff was like reading the titles was about the Monster Protection Society, but then we got into some character stories like Sasara at a young age. So that's why I was like, I think one of them was titled like Sasara at like age 18 or something like that. So I'm like, I don't know if that technically had to deal with like the Sasara and Hibiki episode, which was like episode 10. So that's, you know what I mean? I don't know, like the 1-to-1. So like we're potentially in the 100 chapters. Like I think, isn't it up to 15 volumes or is it way higher than that? There are 18 published volumes. I think in total there's 181 chapters. It's like 170 something, 181 haven't been put into like volume 19 yet. So I don't, like I said, I'm looking through it again. I'm not quite sure where we're at. We're like maybe around anywhere between like volume 10 and maybe 12 or 13. I don't know. We're somewhere in that ballpark. Chapter, like I said, reading the titles, it's hard to say where we are 1-to-1 because there's some stuff that seems like flashback chapter stuff. So it's like, once again, how much is condensed, what might have gotten skipped over and stuff like that. But we probably covered maybe similar amount of coverage, like volume and chapter wise, maybe as the first season. I don't know. Once again, there's still a decent enough chunk left either way to adapt, but it seems like we might stop here, even though the manga is just going to be one of those cases where it's like, well, the manga's still ongoing and the anime probably isn't going to cover everything. Once again, more often than not, that ends up being the case. And at least with season two's like announcement, it came like the same day at the as the season one finale. In fact, the season one finale ends with you going like, "Hey, season two's in production." There's been no word. That doesn't mean like later on, because some seasons there's like years in between, so maybe it'll get announced later. So I don't know. It seems like this might be the end, especially the way it ends kind of makes you go like, well, that feels like a wrap up, but it's like, well, it's just one of those situations of, if you want to know where the rest of the story goes, you're gonna have to read the manga. So this might be a finale. So I'll, once again, I could always change the title of the YouTube video at any point later on. It's not that big of a deal. So I might label it as a finale, might keep it the season 2 finale. Just depends on what kind of mood I'm in. But I would love to get a season 3 because I'd love to see where we go. But once again, even if we don't, there's at least the manga. So there's that. But I mean, this is a hell of a show. Like, once again, the moment I heard a general premise of what this was about, once again, it was pitched as The Boys Meets Power Rangers. I was like, okay, that's interesting, and it did not disappoint. This is a hell of a series. I like how quirky it is, but there's also like some cool like emotional beats to it, and it's just a lot of fun, and I'm just like so curious. Like, especially this season, I had no idea this season was going to take the direction that it did. So D kind of deviated a tiny bit away because he was still trying to figure stuff out, and I think the ending here has reconfirmed himself on the position he stands in the grand scheme of things. And he's not alone. He's got Uskubo by his side. So I wonder, does she let him out without letting anyone know? Where do things stand with him and Suzukiri. There's also the situation of, like, if you notice, like, his leg never did fully recover, so I don't know if he's going to end up having a future prosthetic leg or what. Will he go back to being pretending to be Hibiki once and for all? Like, who knows? Because I mean, only some people know like him, who he is. Like, will you go back to Green with Chidori? It's like, probably not, because Uskubo quit, so they'll probably be operating on their own from the outside, maybe. I don't know. It begs a lot of questions. I also should have talked about it too. We never got the opening thing where it's like, oh, here's a mech versus Death Machine. Maybe it's like, maybe that's probably like something from the TV show. It isn't applicable to like the real world or the Dragon Keepers. Maybe that's how that operates. I thought that's what we're going to get. Nope, never happened. So, well, not in a mech kaiju fighting type of thing, but you get what I'm saying. It still does happen where like everyone comes through to kind of lead to Yakushi's demise. But yeah, I've kind of run my mouth off long enough. If this is all we kind of get anime wise, like I said, there's still the manga. Obviously, shout out to all people involved. Obviously, like on the animation and directing and writing of the anime front, but obviously shout out to the mangaka Negi Haruba, which did not realize he was as young as he is. He's only 33, soon to be 34 next month. So I thought that was interesting. Kind of puts us around, like, he's like a little tiny bit less than a year older than me. So I thought that was just interesting. I was like, oh, I didn't realize you'd be as young. But I know, I was reading a little on Wikipedia. Obviously, the mangas had to stop and start a couple of times because in traditional and sad fashion, mangakas tend to get sick very easily just because of the nature of their work. It's one of those careers that, a lot of mangaka end up having a lot of health issues. I'm wondering how many mangaka have avoided that. Just like the crunch times and conditions of just like the nature of the job. But it's like, a lot of mangaka go through that, Anyway, just, shout outs to Neji Haruba just for just coming up with this cool concept in his story. So, like I said, even if we don't get more of the anime, which I hope we do, because you never know what the future holds, because nothing's been announced yet, but there could be an announcement later, or maybe this is just the end for the anime. So, but the manga, once again, is always there, and still more story to go because it's still ongoing. So, but yeah, like I've said it before and I'll say it again. I've run my mouth off enough. I'll end things here. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.